we would like to start. So if everybody can find a chair, then I'm very happy to welcome you all. Welcome by ARC 2020 and welcome by Slow Food. My name is Arie van der Brand and I'm this afternoon your moderator. I would like also to ask for the later debate, if you have a remark, a question, please speak slow and in short sentences, because then you are sure that you will be translated. Second is, if you, and especially for the people who are now watching or by the internet or outside here on the square at the European Parliament, the participants of the march, the Good Food March, if you Twitter, please do it in English. A warm welcome, especially I think, to all the marchers and bikers who have been on the road for days and days, and I think that's a huge effort to show the concerns of the European citizens about good food. I also welcome many friends from organizations, from institutions who are part of ARC. ARC now, the Agriculture and Rural Convention, has more than 160 organizations who are part of this important convention. And I think also a warm welcome to our guests today, because I think it's important to realize that we are now in a very important process of the dialogue and the co-decision making between Commission and Parliament. And I think it's the first time, and I think also thanks again to Dacian Ciolos, who 2.5 years ago, when he started the reform of the CAP 2013, invited the civil society to come up with a vision and ideas of the future of the agriculture and the rural development. Welcome. And I welcome Paulo de Castro, I welcome Dacian Ciolos, and I welcome very much also Egli Pantelekos, the Minister, I say, of Agriculture and the Vice Minister of Cyprus. We've asked the three first to start with their, to give their idea on the CAP reform, and I'd like to start with Paulo de Castro, because I think also it's important to know that we are here under the patronage of the President of the European Parliament, Martin Schulz, who could not come this afternoon, but we are very happy that the President of the Ag Committee will be here to welcome you and to say the idea about the future of the CAP. Up to you.
Okay. I think I can speak in Italian because it should be a total translation.
I think it's translated.
È con grande gioia che oggi do il benvenuto nel Parlamento europeo a Slow Food, a ARC 2020 e a tutti i partecipanti della Good Food March. Vi porto i saluti di Martin Schulz, il Presidente del Parlamento europeo, che avrebbe dovuto essere qui per accogliervi e che sfortunatamente non ha potuto essere presente a causa di un impegno con i presidenti delle altre istituzioni europee e mi ha pertanto pregato di trasmettervi le sue scuse e il suo rammarico per la sua assenza oggi. Faccio quindi le veci io del padrone di casa, dando il benvenuto alle associazioni e ai cittadini che prendono parte a questa giornata, al commissario Ciolos, al segretario permanente del Ministero dell'Agricoltura di Cipro Pantelakis e a tutti i partecipanti della conferenza sulla riforma della PAC 2020, opportunità per la democrazia europea. Benvenuti nella casa dell'unica istituzione europea direttamente eletta dai cittadini, che è quindi la vostra casa. La politica agricola comune, che nel 2012 compie 50 anni, è stata la più importante politica economica.
The CAP has been the most important policy in the history of the EU. It is now going to be reformed, and that's very important because we are going through a crucial moment for the history of the Union, but also for global food. For the first time, the reform of such an important policy will be adopted through the co-decision procedure. It means with the Parliament taking an equal role to the role played by the Council of Ministers of Agriculture. What does it mean in practical terms? As we can see today, we have citizens, farmers who have come here to be heard, and the decision-taking role of the Parliament means an increased participation by the civil society. This is happening with the reform of the CAP, and because this process is going hand in hand with various consultations. In these months, the Parliament, and especially the Agricultural Committee, is working in order to express its position on the reform. The amendments to the reports on various aspects of the CAP are more than 8,000 amendments. Some are afraid of these numbers, but I'm saying that this is a number which reflects democracy and participation, and it shows that we are having a very intense debate, very rich debate. And in this phase, we need your contribution, we need your ideas, your proposals, because, you know, we need to renew the European project. But second, agriculture and the policies are in front of a very important challenge.
Fino a qualche giorno fa le previsioni sui raccolti davano in 5 anni.
The latest data let us hope for the best, but we have to be very careful. The theme of food security has become a priority, but it's not enough. Agriculture, food production and their governance are critical for the development of the planet.
Consapevolezza di questo nodo a tutti i livelli dell'Unione Europea. Il problema di nutrire una popolazione mondiale in aumento, che cambia stili di vita, e di farlo in modo sostenibile con un impiego efficiente e razionale delle risorse, e cioè riconoscendo all'agricoltura.
We need to use the resources in a very reasonable way. We need to maintain the ecosystems, and this is a huge challenge. This is a challenge for the whole of mankind, and it has to be seen as such by the various stakeholders. The new CAP will have to find a difficult point of balance between the economic elements, the environmental elements, and that's what sustainability is all about. Economic sustainability is impossible without an increased participation of the farmers as far as the environmental aspects are concerned. But the farmers will not be...
Quand vous êtes en Canal B...
...petere nel mercato. Se alle aziende agricole chiediamo non solo di produrre cibo, ma come hanno sempre fatto, ma di farlo meglio, diventando presidio ecologico e di sviluppo sociale. Se a questo compito, come è giusto, diamo un valore strategico per il futuro dell'Europa e del mondo. Allora è chiaro che non possiamo permetterci di perdere nessuno di questi presidi, neanche un'azienda agricola. Questo lo dobbiamo sempre tenere in mente. C'è un ultimo elemento che vorrei ricordare quale contributo al dibattito. La sfida della sostenibilità si vince con l'innovazione organizzativa e che va trasferita con più efficienza agli agricoltori. L'innovazione può essere una risorsa anche per le tradizioni gastronomiche. Spero di aver fornito alcuni spunti utili di cui comunque torneremo a parlare questo pomeriggio e quindi a questo punto ripasso la parola a Van den Brand. Grazie molto.
Thank you.
Sorry for the technical problems.
Interesting words. maybe one question, because we are here together for good food. What is your favorite dish?
Spaghetti, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. We go to Dacian Ciolos, the Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you a lot, Ari. Dear Paolo, dear Carlo, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's quite a pleasure for me to welcome you here once again, and I appreciate not only the fact that you came, but also on your road coming here you expressed a lot. And as some of you said, we are only at the start of a long road. And your involvement in the reform of the CAP is essential. And that's nothing new, I'm telling you. Even before we started to prepare the content of the review, I expressed the wish to launch a very wide public consultation so that civil society could express itself. In 2010, we organized this public consultation with a conference that took place in the month of July to draw its conclusions. The civil society, civil democracy is already present as soon as the start of the discussions about the review of the CAP. And your involvement, the involvement of civil society, should continue, especially in a moment, as Paolo de Castro said, a moment during which all is open to debate. The proposals were made by the Commission more than 1 year ago. Amendments by the European Parliament were submitted or being drafted. The Council already started to go into some details of the reform. And as usual, such a reform will be the result of a give and take, a compromise, a normal and natural compromise in such a thing as a democracy. No one could be willing all his or her ideas to go through, because we are in a very diverse society. But this compromise should be built not behind closed doors. It should be little by little developed in a transparent way on the basis of ideas expressed by the civil society. And that's the reason why your work is of a tremendous importance, especially during the phase of discussions within the Council and the Parliament on the legislative proposals of the European Commission. And your action is also important for another reason. We have to re-establish good links between farmers and the mainstream society. In the past, these links were natural. Many people, even living in cities, had roots in villages, and the food reality was much closer to the end users of the farming process, the consumers. But now things have changed, and generations of people living in the city have no relationships whatsoever now with people living in the rural environment, and the farming developed. There is now a clash between the farmers and the consumers. Efforts must be made to rebuild those links. And to do so, both ways are needed. I mean to say that the farmers must be understood and must be valued by the consumers, thanks to demonstrations like yours, or whenever you go and buy a product. At the same time, the society should be able to express itself. And when the farmers decide to change their farming process, they should take into consideration what the consumers are expecting from them. Because, of course, farmers are working for their families, but they use the living material, and their work has an impact not only on the food products, but also on the soil. That's the reason why your action, your activities shouldn't be one-off events, and should not only be linked to the review of the CAP. It should be a springboard to restore the confidence, the mutual confidence between the farmers and the rest of the society. As I told you, you as consumers, you also have the possibility to influence the European agriculture in a different way, not only by being present during the review process. A farmer depends upon public subsidies received through public policies like the Common Agricultural Policy, but he or she also lives with the fruits of what he or she sells, the products that they sell. And by choosing the products we want to choose, we also influence the type of farming. And as a commissioner in charge of commissioner, but I'm sure that this also applies to all those who decide, we accept the responsibilities of our decisions. But in order to make sure that farming survives, it is not enough to develop a common agricultural policy if, when buying the product, you do something totally different. We need to take an informed choice, and by making an informed choice, we also decide upon which type of farming we want. Do we want any type of food products, provided they are cheap, or do we want a sustainable, development-oriented agriculture? And when you have to choose between a wide range of products, if you choose a product that doesn't explain how it was processed and the impact it had on the environment, do you make an informed choice? So we also have a work to do. We don't only have to lobby on the decision takers, we also have to make an informed choice. And I would like what I'm doing today and the review of the CAP I'm conducting to have an impact. Even if you double the Common Agricultural Policy, even if you multiply it by 10, if the choices that you make, the food choices that you make as a consumers are not coherent with your expectations, at the end of the day, the results will be devastating. I would even say more. The reform must go up to its end, and even after its end, it should continue. It is important for you to be present now, when the decision is taken, but a lot of things will still have to be done after the decisions are taken, when the local authorities, the regional authorities, national authorities will have to translate them into national legislations. Now, with an EU of 27, Europe and Brussels cannot decide everything, and Brussels cannot think about all the provisions to put in the legislative proposals. We open doors, we create instruments that the member states will choose, that the member states will decide to use or not to use in a certain European framework, with quite a great deal of flexibility that makes it impossible to take into consideration the local realities. And taking into consideration the local authorities can also happen in different ways, meaning that we'll have to influence the farmers and the consumers up to the end. So you should be involved also in the implementation of the reform at the level of the different advisory bodies that will be or are already developed at national level, because it will be another important step that you will have to follow if you want to achieve good results. I will close my presentation by thanking you once again for your presence, your mobilization, for all that you've been doing until now. I hope that you will express yourself clearly enough in your diversity so that the Council and the Parliament can hear you, can hear what you have to say, and so that at the end of the day we are able to develop a positive compromise in a very transparent way, because I'm convinced that the legitimacy of the future common agricultural policy will highly depend upon the legitimacy that you will give it. But to do so, we must be all coherent. We must make sure that the farmers are able to survive not only in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, but also in 2 months. So we'll have to take into consideration the long term, the mid term and the short term. And I think that today we can make an informed choice that in a way will influence positively, or I dare say negatively, the agriculture in the future. Thank you.
Merci, Dacian.
Thank you a lot, Dacian Soros.
So, because we are here as farmers and citizens and consumers, that you also focus on the potential power of the shopping bag. And I think thanks for that idea as well. We go to Madame Pantelakis from Cyprus. 10 minutes for you.
Thank you. Dear Vice President of the European Parliament, Mr. Papastamos, dear Mr. De Castro, Chairman of the European Parliament's Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, dear Commissioner Cholos, dear Mr. Petrini, President of Slow Food, dear Mr. Van de Brandt, distinguished speakers and other participants of this important conference, ladies and gentlemen. It is with a great pleasure that I address the conference CAP Reform 2020, an opportunity for European democracy, on behalf of the Cyprus Presidency of the Council of the European Union. We are in the middle of a major effort to reform the CAP in terms of scope, perhaps the widest reform process that the CAP has ever seen, and we speak here about a policy that has been repeatedly and sometimes profoundly reformed in its long history. Of course, the forthcoming CAP reform can be considered as unique, since for the first time a joint decision will be taken by the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union. The stakes are very high, and in situations like this, it is important to listen carefully to stakeholders and to consult civil society in general. All stakeholders are entitled to their viewpoints and their own expectations in the reform process. The final decision will be taken by the institutional triangle of the Council, Parliament and the Commission. As Commissioner Cholos recently emphasized, it's essential that the process and content of the compromise be understood by the stakeholders. The political and administrative legitimacy of the decision-making process must be underpinned by a legitimacy that reflects the whole of society through its various channels of representation. That is why today's conference can be considered as extremely important. Since October last year, the debate on the Commission's CAP reform proposals has taken centre stage in all European Union institutions. We face the challenge of reshaping the CAP to adjust it to the changing needs, priorities and expectations of European farmers, citizens and taxpayers. Our citizens and stakeholders, all of you who came here today, and we thank you for that, expect from us to safeguard a sustainable, productive and competitive European agricultural sector, producing sufficient quantities of good quality and tasty products based on Europe's rich and varied traditions, know-how and advanced safety standards, to ensure at the same time that agriculture and food production are as green as possible, protecting the environment, contributing to climate change, and utilizing natural resources efficiently. Clearly, our mission is to ensure food security in a sustainable way while contributing to several other important societal concerns, including maintaining the attractiveness of the countryside and fostering balanced territorial development and vibrant rural communities. The main issues that this conference will address: food security, healthy food and sound development of rural areas, fair farm prices, environmentally sustainable farm practices, constitute priority themes for the Cyprus presidency as well. It's expected that during this conference, in addition to the open dialogue between civil society and the members of the Parliament, a series of serious and pressing issues will be discussed. Issues like the contribution of the new CAP towards strengthening the economic development of rural areas, regulating food markets and ensuring fair prices for farmers and consumers, as well as supporting of sustainable farming and linking subsidies with social and environmental criteria. As Cyprus presidency, we will ensure that the new CAP will accommodate citizens' demands and expectations concerning food safety and quality, as well as delivery of public goods. Access to safe and healthy food products is a vital part of consumers' protection. It is also essential that common rules for safe food are defined from farm to fork, not only for products produced within the EU, but also for the imported ones. Let me now say a few words about the Cyprus presidency's more general priorities and programme. We are all aware of the link with the multiannual financial framework negotiations, to which the Cyprus presidency attaches utmost importance. We were encouraged in this respect by the position taken by the European Council last June that an agreement on the MFF should be reached by the end of 2012, and the recent decision by the President of the European Council to convene an extraordinary meeting of the European Council specifically for this purpose on November 23rd. This means that the discussion of the relevant legislative text should be accelerated. Our priority objective is therefore to adopt a partial general approach in November on the CAP reform proposals to reflect the centre of gravity of the Council on each of the 4 draft regulations. Of course, our planning takes account of the timetable and work of our institutional co-legislator, the European Parliament, with the representatives of which we have already initiated steps to enter into an anticipating, constructive and positive dialogue and cooperation. Such a dialogue can only be unofficial and unbinding for as long as we don't have an official mandate by the Council, but with goodwill I am sure we can go a long way in preparing the ground for what is to follow. This unofficial dialogue between our 3 institutions was initiated a few days ago during the informal Agricultural Council in Cyprus. I would like to assure you that the Cyprus presidency will do all it can in the coming months to bring about a sound dialogue between all involved institutions, which will lay the solid foundations for ambitious and well-balanced agreements in the second half of 2012 and beyond. I would like to close my intervention by wishing the best of success to this conference. We will study very carefully the results of your deliberations, and I trust that you will make an important contribution to the ongoing debate on the reform of the CAP. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pantelakis. To give the view also, I think it's important for us to know what, say, the agenda is of the Cyprus government in this respect. And also I think you give a good notion about the complexity of the 3 institutions on the European level. And the 3 institutions, and the 4th force is the civil society, where we're talking about today. We now will watch a video with a special message from Olivier de Schutter, who is the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food. He could not be here today, but we are very happy that at least he sends us a message by video, say from the global world level. The video, please.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to address the participants in the conference on the CAP reform as an opportunity for European democracy. And I would like to thank the organizers, Agriculture and Rural Convention, ARC 2020 and Slow Food, for their generous offer to allow me to deliver a few remarks, despite me not being able to be in Brussels in person as I have commitments in New York today. As the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food appointed by the Human Rights Council, I am expected to lead consultations and to prepare studies in order to address recommendations to governments as to how the right to food could be better realized in all regions. And I would like to comment briefly on two of the priorities that in my work I have been putting forward that are closely connected to the theme of this conference. First, I believe that the first priority should be to rebuild local food systems. We need to do so for a number of reasons. First of all, because the greater role of international trade in the provision of food and the failure to invest in local food production has increased the dependency of poor developing countries on food imports over the last few years. In fact, the food bills of least developed countries increased 5- or 6-fold between 1992 and 2008. Typically today, these imports account for around 25% of the food consumption of these countries. This, of course, is a source of vulnerability, as price shocks on international markets shall become more frequent in the future. And this is illustrated by the food price crisis of 2008, of 2010-11, and the crisis of today. This puts these countries at a considerable risk. Second, the evolution of the past 30 years towards increased dependency on globalized food chains has created various challenges from the point of view of nutrition, the quality of the food that we eat. Many developing countries today tend to export high-quality foods, tropical fruits, vegetables in particular, to rich countries, while importing refined grains, rice and wheat in particular. This means that even where increased trade has lowered the price of micronutrients in low-income countries, at least in the absence of price shocks, the reverse has been true for products that are the most nutritious. In middle-income countries, the nutrition impacts of the globalization of food chains have been slightly different. There, what we've seen is a nutrition transition, a shift from diets high in complex carbohydrates and fibers to diets with a higher proportion of fats and sugars. This leads to new diseases, higher heart diseases, type 2 diabetes, some types of cancers, and obesity. And this shift is accelerated by the expansion of trade in food commodities and the acceleration of vertical integration in food chains, both of which increase the availability of processed foods and soft drinks in these emerging economies, as illustrated, for example, by the impacts on Mexican children of the entry into force of the North American Free Trade Agreement in 1994. However, the main reason why local food systems must be rebuilt is because of the problems associated with the promotion of export-led agriculture. What we've seen is that in the past, agricultural policies have tended to focus on increasing revenues from exports. But this often has negatively impacted local small-scale farmers in developing countries. It is not these farmers who benefit most from the opportunities that access to international markets represent for some. It is often difficult or even impossible for these small-scale farmers to overcome the many obstacles they face in entering global food chains. Yet, it is these very small-scale farmers, these poor farmers, who are victims of the pressure on land and water, natural resources on which they depend, but for which increasingly they have to compete with the agro-export sector. It's been estimated, for example, for 2007-2008, that the net food imports of the EU require 35 million hectares to be produced, the equivalent of the entire territory of Germany. This illustrates the importance of the pressure exercised by export-led agriculture on those who seek to feed themselves, their families, their communities. In addition, export-led agriculture is overwhelmingly characterized by monocropping and the resulting loss of agrobiodiversity and by an unsustainable reliance on external inputs. In contrast, rebuilding local food systems would benefit local small-scale farmers for whom the local markets are much more accessible than the global value chains where they face major obstacles. Access to local markets means higher incomes for local farmers. The reduction in rural poverty, in turn, can benefit other sectors of the local economy. Increasing the incomes of the rural poor means that larger markets will be open for local service providers and producers of manufactured goods. And it also means that local food processing industries can develop for all the crops that require some processing to be edible. This not only creates employment in sectors outside agriculture, it also can benefit the urban consumers, the poor consumers in cities whose access to locally produced, fresh and nutritious foods shall improve. The relocalization of food systems shall also help overcome the separation between local food producers and the urban consumers. Let us remember that by 2050, 69% of the population globally will be living in cities. Because large cities will expand, competition for land will increase between industrial and urban users and agricultural uses. Cities will require more and more food supplies, leading to greater traffic congestion and pollution, and testing the capacities of food distribution systems. The demand for convenience and processed foods will increase, sold in supermarkets or fast food stores. For poor families in particular, the increased distance from sources of food production can represent a serious problem, raising transport costs and leading to the dietary shifts that I have already mentioned. For all these reasons, we cannot simply claim the need to link local small-scale farmers to the urban consumers. We must also rethink the rural-urban continuum in its entirety by promoting urban and peri-urban agriculture. A number of strategies can be deployed in order to promote such relocalization of the food systems. They include, for example, transport infrastructure to connect local farmers to the urban markets, land planning to allow for the emergence of urban and peri-urban agriculture, the use of public procurement for schools and public institutions to support local small-scale producers. Such strategies also include support to farmers' markets, direct-to-consumer food marketing strategies, linking small-scale farmers to markets in conditions that allow them to increase their incomes and to remain in control of their production. Local food systems thus conceived have made spectacular progress in recent years in a range of developing but also developed countries. In the United States, direct-to-consumer food sales have more than doubled over the past 10 years. Community-supported agriculture, CSA schemes, also show strong growth in many countries such as Canada, France, where the network of the Association pour le maintien d'une agriculture paysanne, the AMAP, now numbers more than 1,200 CSA schemes. These initiatives, which are often linked to an increased demand by consumers for organic and fresh locally produced products, ensures farmers a guaranteed outlet for their produce and stable revenues. A second priority I see for the future is the promotion of greater accountability and democracy in the development of food systems. Worldwide, more and more movements claim that citizens must regain control over food systems and food chains that have been increasingly corporate-driven and shaped under the pressure of international markets and the exigencies of export-led agriculture. This food democracy movement is vibrant at the local level, and the slow food movement illustrates this remarkably. Food policy councils are also being established in a number of regions, which aim to improve the sustainability of food systems. The movement of food policy councils began 30 years ago in the US, in Tennessee, and they have expanded since spectacularly in the United States and in Canada, where the first Food Policy Council was established in Toronto in 1991. At national level, food democracy often takes the form of participatory fora, allowing for a permanent dialogue between ministers or their delegates and civil society representatives. In Brazil, CONSEA, the National Food and Nutrition Security Council, addresses recommendations to the Interministry Task Force, the Interministry Chamber of Food and Nutrition Security, which is in charge of implementing the National Food Security Strategy. In other countries, such as Guatemala and Ecuador, the body representative of civil society can make binding decisions. Certain fora may favor a chain-wide learning process about the food system from the farmer to the consumer, allowing governments to identify blockages and to improve the sustainability of the system as a whole. During my mission in South Africa in 2011, for example, I was very encouraged by the intention expressed by the South African Human Rights Commission to deepen the work launched through the Southern African Food Security Change Lab, linking the various actors of the food chain in search of innovative solutions that can improve the sustainability of the food systems. This demand for food democracy also exists at the global level. With the reform in 2009 of the Committee on World Food Security, the monopoly of governments and the segmentation of policy areas in food security governance are coming to an end at the global level. The CFS, the Committee on World Food Security, has no formal decision-making power, of course, but the collective will that it expresses, with the important legitimacy of the process, will make it very difficult for governments to ignore its recommendations. What we are seeing with the CFS is a new breed of global governance emerging, in which NGOs, farmers' organizations, are co-authors of international law with governments and international agencies. The reason why accountability and empowerment are so important is because they can unlock the possibilities for the kind of transition we need towards sustainable food systems. We need to move the agri-food systems away from the exclusive focus on boosting production and towards integrating the requirements of adequacy of diets, social equity, and environmental sustainability if we are to achieve durable success in combating effectively hunger and malnutrition. Civil society organizations can help governments to remain on track and to fulfill their promises, and they also can ensure consistency across areas and across time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is in fact what the right to food is about. It is a human right recognized in international law that demands from governments that the decisions that they make in the areas of food and agriculture are accountable to the people, so that every individual ultimately will have access to sufficient and adequate food to lead a healthy and active life. I'm confident that this conference will make a major contribution towards this objective, so that the EU may lead by example in moving towards sustainable food systems for our generation and the next. Thank you.
I think at least that the ARC organization have tonight to send an email to Oliver de Schutter to thank him for his contribution, because I think it's important. ARC is saying we need a paradigm shift in agriculture or in food policy. And I think that Oliver de Schutter makes very clear that it's not only something in Europe, it is all over the globe, all over the world, on the grassroots level. Are things changing? And I think that's very hopeful. And I think it's important for our debate in Europe, at least, that he makes the connection between health and between food and agriculture. And I think at least for the European Parliament, it's very important that not only the Agricultural Committee is talking about the CAP, but the CAP is touching all citizens, all youngsters, all kids, by the quality of the food. And then the relationship with the health, at least, is not only a thing of agriculture, but is broader in the European Parliament. At least we hope. Now we go from the official side, we go to the civil society side in the program. We have 6 speakers who have all 7 minutes sharp to explain what, as citizens, their main demands are. And we don't ask them as to represent their organization. You know, they are all active in organizations, and we will mention them. But as a person, as an individual European citizen, how do they see the future and what kind of concrete proposals they have? And we like to start these 7 speakers. We like to start, and I think we all have to give her a warm applause, with Regine Hollo from Meine Landwirtschaft, who has been biking to Brussels. Regine, up to you.
Yes. Yeah, hello. My name is Regina. Hello. I'm from the Lower Rhine area in Western Germany, and I was born in an agricultural family. I studied agriculture, and now I started my campaign more recently. Now I represent the Good Food March, which started about 4 weeks ago, and the idea was that someone asked me if I wanted to join it, and I immediately knew I would like to contribute something. I would like to participate. Here we have some cyclists who want to do something in favor of a better agriculture, and I think it's the best thing I've done in the last 5 months. I can tell you that what's the most important thing is that the topic of the common European agriculture has reached civil society. 4 weeks ago we started in Munich, and we have been cycling 1,500 kilometers from Munich to Brussels, and we stopped in different farmers' places, and we tried to get in touch with citizens' initiatives, with consumers, and everyone, all those people, we met and we talked about agriculture, has helped us and has supported us in order to make sure that we do something about a change here in Brussels. Now, when we got to Brussels, we were about 200 people, and in total we got across 3 different countries, and we organized 50 events, and 90 organizations supported this food march. I'm extremely glad about the fact that I can be here. I'm sure that this conference is going to contribute tremendously in order to present our demands in front of the European Parliament, and I hope we're going to have good results. Thank you very much.
One question. What was for you? One question to you. What was for you the most important event during your bike trip? What was the most important experience?
Oh.
Oh dear. Well, looking at the whole group, really we had a good group dynamics. We really stuck together no matter what the weather was throwing at us, rain in the mountains, etc. High mileage each day. That was wonderful.
And thank you again for all the courage, for the miles you biked. Thank you very much. We go to Willy Schuster from Eco Rurales. Yep, up to you.
Thank you very much. I don't know where to start. I want to be very... Yeah, you said we may be very personal, yes. And I have a testimony to bring from Romania, from the smallholders of Romania, but not only Romania, but the whole of Eastern Europe and Europe. I am, like I said, my name is Willy Schuster, and I am an organic small-scale farmer. I'm married. I have 5 children. We have 7 cows. I am milking them by hand every morning and every night. But and also the last numbering, the recension, or how you call it, when do you number the population, show that Romania has still, at this time, 2011, 4.7 million smallholders, farms. And more than 30% of the 19 million population live off their land, live from agriculture. They work actively in agriculture and live from this. But there is also many Eastern European countries. What Olivier Schutte said, I could say just amen and shut my mouth, because this is really, you should listen to Olivier Schutte, that's all. Because this is very relevant for Eastern European countries, what he said about emerging economies and so on. We are being mobbed out, and I have here my black jacket. I want to wear my black jacket. Because as a symbol of the millions of Romanian small-scale farms that had to die since we entered European Union. They have been killed, just genocide. It was a genocide on the Romanian small-scale farmer. And I can't be non-emotional here, because even in my village, for example, where I live, before EU, my village had 400 cows, and after 4 years, we have 40 cows. My village has 40 cows in the village herd. And you might think, what is this important? But these are livelihoods. Ladies and gentlemen, these are livelihoods of families, of family farms. EU killed them. And this should not be so. I don't think EU aimed that, but it is the lobby of the multinationals. And I see that EU is owned by the United States and of its corporations. And this is a sad situation. And I'm also sad because of Mr. Dacian Cioloș's new rhetoric about giving to throw the dead cat in the neighbor's courtyard. To say, it's up to you what you are buying. But the problem is, like Olivier Soutet said, the availability, Mr. Dacian Cioloș. The people are mobbed out, and I made very, very bad. The farmers' products, all the media and all the politicians and administration are mobbing us out and are killing us. It's a genocide. So these 400 husbandries in my village who sold and gave away their cows, they are afraid to go to their neighbor and buy raw milk because they are told lies about raw milk and about good food. And for example, another testimony I can tell you, 2 years ago I went to Armenia exactly with CFS. It was the beginning of including civil society into the CFS. And in Armenia I told these guys, because our host organization was the so-called Consumer Protection NGO, which is a gongo, because a government-financed NGO. But it's called some consumer protection. And we know this because in Eastern Europe it's the same. In all countries we have Consumer Protection NGO, which is not an NGO, which is not protecting. And I told them, guys, if you already contemplate in Armenia, Armenia, where is Armenia? And they're contemplating European standards and food and hygiene standards, all of this kind of rubbish. And I said, if you are contemplating this, dear NGO, you will be protecting your citizens from good food. And the guy was not happy with what I said in the plenum, because this is the truth. They are protecting the citizens from good food. And I'm happy this conference has the name, the Good Food, and the march is a Good Food March. In our country, we organized a Good Food branch in front of the Agricultural Ministry, and we gave good food and direct from the peasants. And our ministry did not come to talk to us. So I appreciate that you guys came and are talking to us. But our testimony is a sad testimony. One more short testimony. My sister and my brother-in-law have had a small bakery in a small town. And what they did, they take from farmers. Farmers can come with their flour and can bring and make bread for them. Small-scale bakery. And he tried for 3 years to cope with the EU after we joined EU. And my brother-in-law gave up. Even since he was 13 years old, he worked in a bakery. He's an excellent baker. He's an excellent baker. And he was mobbed out. And like 2 years ago, we went with my sister to Germany. And he is working for a German small-scale baker. Praise God, there are still small-scale bakers in Germany. But in Romania, they have been mobbed out. And so are all the smallholders and the good food producers. So my question and I raised this topic for Mr. Dacian and for all, what about availability? You can say go and buy, but the people are made bad and they have said, it's not safe to buy from them. But we are already offering branches, we are offering lunches, dinners, direct in the farmer's place. And we are there, and we just want to make a sign. We are here, and we can feed. My banner here says, peasants can feed Europe, Romania can feed very well, but can nourish very well Europe. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Willy Schuster, thank you very much for your contribution. It's not only a contribution for the head, but also for the heart. And thank you very much for that. And because I think that in general, in the Western European countries, we have no idea about the huge amount of small farmers in Eastern Europe. So thank you again very much. We go to Erwin Schopkes from MIC. Is where?
Is he here?
Ja, okay.
Meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear politicians. Well, I have heard my Romanian colleague. I can tell you I have 70 milking cows at home, but I face the same situation. Why are we farmers? Around the clock, 365 days a year. Every time we have to be ready. A cow may be calving. Why do we do this job? We love this job. Our heart is in this job. We are passionate about this job. We do the job because we love nature, because we love animals, and because we love the environment. And if I take stock of the situation back home, as I said, 70 cows. My son is 20 years old. He would love to be my successor. And I have to tell him, dear boy, forget it. Rather choose something else. If I have to tell him that, what is the world we are living in, please? I think you in policy have a responsibility. It is high time that you are aware of that responsibility. We are facing a crisis much worse than 2009. For the past 6 months, I received 24 cents for a liter of milk. I would need 40 cents in order to cover my expenses. So for the last half year, I have been losing money each day. Imagine you go to your job. Everyone here probably has a job. You go, you work, and you actually have to fill your pockets with money before you start doing your job. Who would do that? But that's our situation. And we are not fighting for a certain milk price. We need a change of the system. If we don't say goodbye to the system as it is, then the next generation will not have a future. We are not asking for subsidies and payments. What we want is a price for our products that covers our costs and gives a fair revenue and remuneration for our work put in. We want to become again a part of society. Well, when you visit our villages and look at the pubs, where do you see the farmer visiting the pub? The farmer is back home working day and night, trying his very best in order to produce high-quality foodstuff. They no longer have the time to be participants in civil society. The situation is so bad that the farmers choose to stay home. We hardly can motivate them to come for a demonstration. They are at home, they are sad, they do their job, and if it's no longer possible, they just leave their farmstead and stop doing the job. And if the society, the population does not help us farmers, it will not be possible for us farmers alone to change the system. We need a regulation of the market in the future. We have seen it in the financial market crisis, where no regulation once was the buzzword, and we reap the results, obviously. So we need regulation. We need market mechanisms that work. We need a monitoring body. We need a regulatory authority with the representatives of us farmers so that we can achieve a cost-covering price. where also the milk producing entities are represented. This monitoring body also needs to have representatives of the consumers, so that is not the consumer left alone defraying all the cost in the end. That needs a framework to be defined by the politicians. This does not require money, it just requires goodwill. Well, dear Commissioner, you indeed have a responsibility. We don't want to hear speeches, we want to see action. We see that multinational companies purchase our soil, our acreage. Our agriculture as it stands now has no future. It will be the big business, it will be speculation that will gain the money. We have met many from parliaments, many parliamentarians. But I want to conclude. Let's look back 2,000 years ago. There was a person on the earth and said, Lord, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. And if you do not initiate this change to the system, please believe me, the next generation will not forgive you.
Thank you very much, Erwin, for your contribution. And I think it's also good that we realize, as you said, you're not only talking about your generation, but you're talking about the sons and the daughters of the actual family farms. And also you have a strong plea, not only about money, but take a look at the market regulations as a system. And you have a strong plea for a change of that system. Thank you very much. We go to Emma Hockerich from the Soil Association. After you. Emma.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So today is quite unusual because I've been asked to give my own story. It's quite different from the types of talks and presentations that I usually do, which focus very much on the science of the arguments and the debates there. But today I'm going to try and speak a little bit from my own heart and tell you why I think that we need a dramatic change to our food and farming system and what I think that that might look like in the future. In terms of my own story, I was born in a very rural part of the southwest of England and was an early yet very passionate supporter for nature. So I could often be found out by myself, getting burnt in the harvest fields and paddling in streams, being really amazed by the creatures out there, the butterflies, the insects, etc. And I had an inherent feeling that we needed to protect this land, this wildlife, and the water and air surrounding it for future generations, without knowing exactly what I could do about it. So when I was growing up, I didn't know that jobs like the one I do now actually even existed. And I work for an organisation, the Soil Association, based in the UK, which promotes all those things that I believed in many years ago. So that inherent link between the health of our soil, the health of plants and animals, and our own health as humans. And I feel really lucky to be exposed to all the information, all the science which makes the case of why exactly that is so important. But others aren't so lucky to be exposed to that information, and so I think it's part of our job to try and change behaviours and try to make that difference to the systems for good food and farming. So what am I asking for specifically? I personally believe that organic and other agroecological approaches need particular attention from policymakers, because they focus on farming within environmental limits. And combined with a shift towards more plant-based diets, they offer solutions to many of the most critical environmental, social and economic challenges which face our current food and farming system. And they call for things like very practical research, which is currently the exception rather than the rule. It also calls for support for a food and farming system which makes sense, and part of that obviously has to be through the CAP reform process. So, for example, just as a detail, to include organic farming as a thematic sub-programme is one sort of technical issue, but of course very important to be able to support those wider system changes. So organic and agroecological systems provide many benefits, and I'm sure lots of us here are very familiar with those, including higher levels of farmland wildlife, more and more rewarding jobs, and a greater contribution to the economic and social well-being of rural areas, very high levels of farm animal welfare, just to name a few of the benefits. And of course, the organic and the agroecological approach doesn't have all the answers, but it is, I believe, what the best system that we have available to us at the moment to address some of the key issues facing us. So the link between what we eat, our own health, and that farming system it may seem obvious to us, but it's very often forgotten. And I think it's really vital that children and other people understand where their food comes from, how to cook it, how to grow it. They're basic things, but a lot of people don't have this access. And a lot of people say, well, it's impossible to ask people to change what they eat. But just one example of this is a project we have. It's called the Food for Life Catering Mark, which gives the public the power to ensure that the food provided that they're eating when they're outside the home, so for example at school or in hospital, is addressing that challenge of being healthy, locally produced, environmentally sustainable. And just that one scheme is already serving around 110 million meals per year in the UK, so it proves that things can be changed. And organic farmers across the world are showing that every day it's possible to produce high-quality food with a low-impact system. But I think we sometimes forget just how radical that system is, and therefore why sometimes we're open to attack from others. So just to conclude, over the next 20 years, we'll have to wean ourselves off over half a century's dependence on oil and gas to provide soil fertility, which is what's happening at the moment. Instead, we'll have to rely on renewable energy, the power of the sun, to supply soil nutrients through nitrogen-fixing crops, etc. So, as one example, 60 years ago, the organic movement started on a course. We don't have the perfect system, but we believe that these techniques already make a significant contribution towards the climate-friendly food production we'll all have to adopt in the future. So let's change our food and farming system before it's too late. Thank you.
Before it's too late, and I think that's also your call for the urgency. You know, we cannot wait much longer. And I think also in your presentation it's very clear that you focus on agroecology. And I think at least if the European Parliament and the European Commission and the European Council takes sustainable agriculture seriously, then we should more invest in science and knowledge about agroecology. And then, as you said, organic agriculture, and I think as ARC we support that very much, is the best laboratory we have to sustain, to get more sustainable, say, conventional agriculture. So thank you very much. We go to Samuel Levy from the Youth Food Movement.
Thank you, Ari. Dear friends, I'm absolutely overwhelmed that so many people came from so many places, and there's hundreds of people standing outside watching this conference who couldn't be inside. Many came, many have the love for food that I feel. Many have the love for the planet that I feel. And for my love actually started when I was 5 years old. I woke up one morning and I decided to bake my parents a cake. And from that moment on I knew that I wanted to become a chef. It was the very first dish I cooked. And as I grew older, I actually started realizing that it wasn't actually only the food I love so much, it's the world that we live on. I actually think I grew up quite near where Emma grew up in the southwest of England, watching the fishermen in the harbours, the farmers in the field, and my mother in the kitchen. She would have loved to say that it was actually my father there from a gender perspective, but it was my mum who inspired me to cook. I actually understood that it's the people and the land that produce the food I love so much. Later, I actually learnt that there's also a very dark side to our food system. Food brings joy in life for many, but many live in hunger or are overfed. I realised that my love for food can only go hand in hand with action to actively change the system. So I started studying political science next to being a chef. This gave me insight of the power the world is built upon, or maybe we should say the world is burdened with. During my search for ways to make a difference, I met many young people from all over the world. Farmers in Brazil, young chefs in England and France, scientists, and just people here in Brussels, policymakers. Many of the young people especially, are now part of the collective search that we are doing to see how we as youth can contribute to a better food system. We, as members of the Slow Food Youth Network, are convinced that the system is not sustainable and very unjust. We believe that doing nothing at this moment is the worst thing we can do. So we look for opportunities all the time to make a change, and we take action. I want to give you an example of what we've been doing. Last week, Albert Heijn, they're the biggest supermarket in the Netherlands, decided unilaterally to cut 2% of the margins of all their suppliers to finance their own growth. In a world in which I believe that we should be investing in a sustainable future, paying farmers less takes us nowhere. In 2 days, using Twitter and Facebook, we set up a well-organised protest, mobilising consumers and farmers together and attracting a great deal of public attention. A day later, Albert Heijn were not going to go ahead with this absurd plan. They drew back. And I think we showed there that today the power is not only with the big corporations and institutions. If consumers and farmers work together in smart new ways, we can reclaim power over our own food system. As youth, we want to actively shape our own future, and for that reason we are here in Brussels together with many others today. For years, as a youth food movement and Slow Food Youth Network, we have been mobilising people to vote with their forks. Basically, what Charles told us just now, we vote every time that we make a choice in the supermarket or anywhere else. But now it is the time that the youth starts helping reshaping the common agricultural policy into a policy that we actually believe is worth voting for. For this reason, we started our own CAP 2013 campaign. Because I really believe that today here, and just being able to come to Brussels, it gives us a great opportunity to help develop a system that will give my generation new chances. Chances for farmers to earn a living and the dignity they deserve. Chances for consumers all over the world to have access to good, clean and fair food. Chances for businesses to innovate and make money on a fair and sustainable way. And chances for the environment to recover from 50 years of industrial agriculture. And although I hope that no one here will deny the importance of the chances I've just been talking about, I'm sure that we don't all see the same paths as the best to get to the changes that we want so badly. But is this a bad thing? I don't think so. The fact that we're sitting here with so many people from all over Europe means that we want positive action, and that is great. And although we see the differences between us, we do respect each other. What I think is crucial is that we step outside of the traditional paradigms and dichotomies and actively look for new approaches and new ways of working together and finding new solutions. I really believe that revisiting the old arguments won't get us anywhere. Respect and diversity are fundamental to the development of a new European agricultural policy. Respect for ecology, for people, and respect for different opinions. Over the past years, the CAP has brought Europe great possibilities to develop. But at the same time, we created a highly industrialised food system dependent on fossil fuels, with little respect for the planet and no focus for diversity whatsoever. We as youth want to help design a new common agricultural policy, which doesn't focus on food as a commodity, but which focuses on sustainability, viable farms in a healthy system, and healthy citizens. During our search, I interviewed many young farmers. Our search was actually supported by the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture. We did a video blog where we interviewed many young farmers to ask them what they think is the future of the CAP and the future of our food system. And the answers were as diverse as you could suspect them to be. Some young farmers do want to intensify and want their farms to grow. Others believe that their small farms are exactly the right skill. They want to grow the highest quality and want to produce goods valued by the public. But all farmers I spoke to are very concerned. They are concerned that their farms are not viable, that their work is not sufficiently valued by the public, and that they can't get the change as quickly as we demand them to change. Listening to what these young farmers say gives us a very, very clear signal about the need for change. The European Agricultural Committee has proposed a revised CAP that focuses on further greening and tries to involve more youth and young people into farming. But we believe the CAP should become more than an agricultural policy. In these times, we can't look at food as something we grow, trade and sell. The new policy should really be the common sustainable food policy that also takes into account people's eating habits and the health of citizens. A food policy which reflects the complexity of modern times. And we should draw lessons learned in the past. I think here together today we are the experts, and we should contribute to the architecture of a new food system. A reform CAP should be the master plan that leads us into a healthy future and a healthy system. To conclude, a future food system needs to respect the planet, its people, and needs to produce food worth eating. I really do believe the CAP should become a sustainable, common sustainable food system. Thank you very much.
At least I think it's
Ja, ich glaube, es ist doch hoffnungsvoll, dass hier plädiert wird, dass nicht nur eine landwirtschaftliche Politik umgesetzt werden soll, sondern wirklich eine Lebensmittelpolitik. Dann hat man die Möglichkeit, in der Zukunft eben auch die Frage der Biodiversität, der Gesundheit des Menschen und so weiter mit zu berücksichtigen. Ich glaube, da haben Sie 3 Worte erwähnt, die auch in der Zukunft der Kampagne von großer Bedeutung sind. Würde, Respekt und Vielfalt. Ich glaube, diese 3 Wörter sind von großer Bedeutung. Würde, Respekt und Diversität, Vielfalt. Ich glaube, es ist sehr wichtig vom Standpunkt der Zivilgesellschaft, dass wir hier ein starkes Plädoyer haben, nicht nur, dass die Paradigmen geändert werden sollten, sondern eben auch dahingegen, wie die Landwirtschaft organisiert wird. Robert Lücker aus Österreich. Er ist unabhängiger Berater über regionale Entwicklung und ein großer Denker. Bitte, Sie haben das Wort.
I don't speak as a consultant here. I speak as a European citizen and consumer and part-time organic farmer in southeast Austria. Please allow me to open a little bit the focus and to wider aspect, that of rural areas at large. Because the more I think about it, the more I come to the conclusion that rural areas in Europe are at the crossroads. They are facing very distinct alternatives. Some of the rural areas in Europe, they cope quite well with the global trends and global territorial competition. They even benefit. partly, some of them at the cost of very quick consumption of natural water and landscape resources due to a very loose handling of spatial and landscape planning and concomitant investments driven more by greed than by the vision of common well-being. But more gloomy are the aspects of a second larger part of rural areas in Europe, that is decline, depopulation, even structural decay, because they are simply too far away or have other handicaps to cope with, and facing global competition, people choose to vote with their feet and go away. The third group of rural areas at risk, I would say, is even more treacherous, because it comes along with the promise of growth and competitiveness. This is what has already been mentioned by speakers dealing with the question of mobbing out, crowding out small producers. You know, global financial capital is very volatile, and in times of crisis, they want to rematerialize the bubble, and the best way to seek safe havens for volatile capital is to buy land. And in facing rising commodity prices, of course, we are now experiencing a shift of properties which has been unprecedented in the last 20 years. And I think the issue of land grabbing is no more an issue of developing countries. It has reached the core of Europe. I think European rural dwellers, or even the European society at large, doesn't care very much about the global competitiveness of European agriculture. I even think they couldn't care less. What they want is healthy, affordable food, produced in small and medium-scaled farms and industries at a reasonable distance, sold and bought at a fair price which does justice to every partner involved. And the rural dwellers, they basically, if you ask them seriously, want to live in resilient communities, well-governed, with freedom of expression and of choice of lifestyles, not being dependent on the tides of global finance or politics. And some rural areas or stakeholders have already taken up this idea and are striving to make this vision, which is a very practical vision, in fact, real. 20 years ago, the Commission invented the Community Initiative Leader, which I consider as one of the most remarkable institutional innovations and also innovation in policy processes it ever did. So now its leader has come in its fourth generation, and for the upcoming period, the Commission has, and I appreciate this, placed a very good proposal to continue and to expand the leader approach, now from 2,300 rural local action groups and about 300 fishery local action groups, possibly if member states take up this positive challenge to urban and agglomeration areas, which is very important, not only for the solution of new problems which are arising in densely populated areas, urban cores, but also for rural-urban relationships and new forms of these relationships. However, I am a little bit concerned that things come out in a different way, and therefore I call on the authorities, the European authorities, specifically the Commission, to put emphasis on two things. One thing in the run-up period of the new budget period, 14-20, and one other aspect during implementation. The first is, I was a little bit implicated in the preparatory negotiations and reflections how to implement community-led local development. This is the generalized name for the LEADER method in Austria. And there are many skeptical arguments saying that the promise of multi-fund approach and simplification sounds very unclear, and the Commission is not explaining what they want with that. And each time when we were promised that the procedures, the monitoring, the rules gets more simplified, we were overwhelmed by a new tsunami of nightmarish control regulations and bureaucratic hindrances. So we rather make more of the same instead of embarking on the endeavor to enlarge, to enhance, to rejuvenate the LEADER approach in rural areas and in territorial cooperation and urban areas. So this is the first concern, that the Commission comes up very quickly with these proposals how, for example, to use simpler accounting, monitoring, decision rules for community-led local development in order to make it happen, because the negotiations at member state levels, level happen now in this second half of 2012. The second concern is relating to the fact that LEADER has undoubtedly shown some signals of fatigue, of losing momentum. This might be due to aging program cycle, also to the subordination under sectoral, mostly agricultural perspectives, but also to bureaucratic inertia and the tendency of regional and national governments to dominate or not to let local action groups grow and become accountable and responsible and sufficiently autonomous in their strategic decision making. So my second call or my second pledge is to ask the European authorities, namely the Commission, not just to forget about LEADER during the implementation period, but to act as some instance assuring the quality of strategy implementation, the quality of local governance, the leeway the local action groups have to negotiate and decide about the destiny of their the territory the local partnership is accountable for. To summarize, we want you to make sure that community-led local development 14 to 20 lives up to the reputation LEADER has had in its best days and way beyond. Thank you.
A strong renewal of LEADER, new vitamins in the programs, and I think very important also for the European political level, for Parliament and Commission. I think that, as you said, LEADER has been and can be in the future one of the most important programs to relate the European level and the institutional level with the local citizens and farmers level. Thank you very much. Finally, we go to Carlo Petrini, well-known Slow Food International President, and I think one of the founding fathers of this type of movement. Up to you.
Cari amici,
dear friends, dear farmers and citizens and members of the European Parliament, please allow me to call you friends, because we, men and women of the modern world, we have developed some kind of pseudo. I should call you brothers and sisters. Only two words, two nice words. We are living beings in this room, or outside this room. We are brothers and sisters because we are children of our Mother Earth, who takes care of us in every way, because it gives us food, water, fibers, inorganic materials in order to build our houses and roads. And we should take care of it in every way, and with our ideas and strength, no matter what we do or of what possibilities we have. One of the best ways we have in order to take care of our Mother Earth is to take care of our food. That is the reason why those dealing with agriculture, production, or transformation of food, or policy or legislation, that's something very important, because it has the opportunity to contribute to keep our Mother Earth strong, wonderful and healthy. This is the aim of the CAP. A united Europe cannot be built only with a single currency, or destroying barriers, or building a bank. And even if we have national borders and we are part of European Union, we do live in the same earth. Our rivers come from the mountains and end up in the sea. And the sea connects different parts of Europe without asking itself questions about the governments or the tongues of the countries it touches. We have searched for a European identity in many sectors, in religion, art, etc., and also in the market. But we never thought that a part of our European identity resides in our way to cultivate earth, to produce food, good quality food, of cooking and of consuming food. For too long, agriculture has been considered as part of the market and not of the identity of the culture, or the psychological and physical well-being, or of the social and environmental quality of the European citizens. This is the reason why we today want to be the voice, the spokesperson of civil society. We, men and women of Europe, we as young children or farmers or employees, students, no matter what we are, we all have something in common, and that makes us part of this very important reflection on CAP. We eat. as well as you, politicians, you also eat. This is the reason why we think that talking about CAP is the most important thing we can all do together. The following is a list of the things which are very important for our European citizens. We think future is important. That is the reason why we would like CAP to be the instrument to facilitate, to make life easier for young people in this Europe which is growing old and that for too long thought more about developing industries than taking care of the resources or of the human resources, the young people. These young people are always very enthusiastic and they want to go back to farming, but very often they find many obstacles, be it economical resources or bureaucracy and even market. Only those who are more stubborn or who have more economical resources succeed. To be a farmer in the 21st century must be a good choice, must be a good economical choice. And during these critical years, it is necessary to understand that agriculture is the only sector that cannot end because it allows us to eat. I would like to say that only the multinationals understood this, the multinationals who steal the land or investors who speculate on food, but those dealing with good quality food, of soil protection, of waters or health must understand that the farmers who believe in sustainability, we will never reach our goals. Secondly, we do care about our planet, so we believe that sustainability must be the tool for our action. Sustainability must last in time for everyone, and this means that every time we deal with a project or with a production which is not sustainable, we should listen to the voice of our Mother Earth. She asked us what Cicerone asked Catilina, until when will you abuse of my patience? How long your folly will play with us? We ask that sustainability become a value of CAP, and agriculture. The aim of agriculture is not to sell products, but to produce good food for everyone. If sustainability becomes the value of the CAP, then the debate on funds can come to an end. The resources of CAP should be adequate. Productions should be sustainable, should produce good food and not raw materials which only impoverish our land and are a danger for our health. Thirdly, we do care about biodiversity because it's only through biodiversity that our Mother Earth can find strength, health and beauty. Monoculture, intensive production, agriculture production at industrial level create problems and only make the interest of very few people. So we ask that CAP sustain biodiversity, and we should start from a very strong idea on traditional seeds and on the right to be used in the market without thinking about legislation. Traditional seeds that every year are renewed and feed us must not have any laws, and they must be used to feed everyone. Fourth point, we also care about justice. This is why we want to give our support to small farmers, small farming. It needs supports in order to reduce administration costs for our farmers. The role of small farming is strategic for the protection of the soil, for the biodiversity, and it's precious for our European identity. It is the duty of the European policy to protect in every way small farming. Abandoning small farming, it's a crime. It represents injustice towards future generations. We should use public funds for public wealth, for those resources that farmers have always defended. Fifth point, we care about knowledge. Actually, knowledges, know-hows, all agriculture needs knowledge. This knowledge that population have been able to transmit for generations. We believe that we must protect knowledge, we must support knowledge, always keeping in mind the importance of sustainability. We ask to finance research and innovation in order to find sustainable solutions in production, transformation and distribution. We also ask to finance the protection of traditional know-how so that they can be a common resource for researchers and farmers. Last point, we also care about good sense. We ask that a reflection be done on animal production. We believe that the kind of feeding that has been done until now has been dangerous for the animals. We ask that products with animal origin, which are more complicated to produce, should be subject to specific measures and legislation. We also ask that the funds we ask for funds for we ask for funds for the production of vegetable origin food instead of animal production. And we also ask to keep in mind that food is necessary to live and not to die, to heal and not to get sick. That's what we ask to the politicians of today. The March for Good Food that led us here today will not end up today. We are sure that we have expressed our beliefs and our ideas as European citizens and citizens of the world. Dear politicians, we have elected you so that you could protect our interests, our common resources. The CAP is one of the most useful instruments that you can use in order to reach this aim. Do not lose this occasion in order to give a sense to your job. European citizens ask for a change. Public money should never be used again for private interests. The well-being of our communities is first and outmost. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlo Petrini. I think you show us very clear when you start on the quality and the health of the plate and of your dish, and when you think about that, then you come at the end at common agricultural policy. And I think you give a very interesting, integrated approach, not only about the quality and the taste of the food, but about the healthy food, about the biodiversity, about the social aspects of the farming. So thank you very much. Before we go to the third session about the rapporteurs, we have 5 minutes left. And I will ask maybe Adagian Ciolos, because we have a kind of dialogue here between Commission, institutions, and the civil society. Maybe it's interesting for you to reflect 1 or 2 or 3 minutes about what the 7 voices from the civil society have been saying here. So if you can give first, si c'est possible de vraiment réagir.
Could you please maybe directly react to what you've heard from civil society? You have a few minutes for that. Thank you very much.
Je ne vais pas vous fâcher, mais je le dis.
Henri, I think I speak too much. And I've been listening carefully. That's why I'm here. I'm here to listen to you, to take notes, and to try and see what I can do as far as I'm concerned. But I believe that the dialogue that you're going to have now is crucial. I'm not saying this just to please the MEPs, because it's also a burden for them. They know very well that in the Commission's proposal there are new ideas, and there is also always inertia in change. I'm aware of that. And I don't want to change things to hurt people, you know. I would like us to help them evolve, because if we can't evolve, sooner or later we will all disappear. So I think we have a good opportunity, and the European Parliament has an opportunity to show that despite the 7,000 amendments, or thanks to the 7,000 amendments, the Parliament can make history in the CAP. Usually the reforms of the CAP have the name of the Commissioner. Very well, sincerely, I would like this time for the Parliament to mark this reform. I don't need to be in the history. I think I'm still quite young, and I hope we can change things. But I'm aware that one single person cannot change everything. We need several people going in the same direction. Of course, we'll have differences of opinions, but there are efforts to be made in the months to come. We need to be quick. We need to go in depth so that afterwards, in cooperation with the Council, where there are ministers who are more used to be involved in this kind of reform, so that we do not destroy the good things in the reform, which could be threatened because some wouldn't want you to support a number of things which lead to changes. So the only thing I would like to say right now is please think about that, and you now have the opportunity to have this dialogue with the rapporteur, with Paolo, who's the president of the Comagri, and I believe that this dialogue is more important than what I can say right now. I will say other things in the future, but for the time being, I would like to give the floor to other people so that afterwards we can speak openly, frankly, and so that we can reach a change which is acceptable but necessary if we want to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you for these final words, which do show how motivated you personally are. And it's important that you don't only represent the institution, but you do it as a human being with a heart and a mind.
The last meeting, the last session, which will be very much informed and shared by Benny Harlan from the Foundation for Future Farming, and Stanka Bishefa from Friends of the Earth Europe. They have been doing a lot of work and been thinking about all that 7,000 remarks and amendments. But I think it's very important that the rapporteurs who are here, and very welcome, dear MEPS rapporteurs, that you are with us, will be asked to react on a summary of their proposals after the presentation of Benny and Stanka. And then every MEP has 2 minutes sharp to react. Benny and Stanka, up to you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I count on you, Ari, to be the 2-minute timekeeper, except for this first intervention. And I have the honor to first welcome the members of the European Parliament, and we have already heard Mr. Di Castro, the chairman of the AC committee, and we have also seen Mr. Capoulas Santos, the rapporteur for the direct payment and the rural development part of the CAP reform, and we have noticed that you have been listening throughout the session so far, as has Mrs. Kadenbach, right next to you, who is the rapporteur for the Environment Committee on the rural development issues, and we look forward to hear from you. We hear the Environment Committee had a vote today on these issues. And we also welcome Mr. Dantin, who is in charge of the single market part of the reform. And unfortunately, we cannot welcome Mr. Lavia, even though we had expected him until this morning. He called. He has something more important. Unfortunately, we cannot go into this part. But we do welcome Martin Häusling, who is the coordinator for agriculture in the Ag Committee for the Green Group, who has also proven, I think, a virtue that we appreciate these days and that is that democracy is based on listening. And, okay. And this is why we also decided to be real cruel with the rapporteurs. It will not be up to you to summarize your reports and all the amendments that are coming, but it will be Stanka and myself who give a very short resume of these, and then we hope to have a really lively discussion with sharp questions to the rapporteurs and immediate reactions each time you get a question. So don't worry, there will be enough room to speak, but in a real dialogue manner. There is one thing I feel I should raise because it does not fall within a specific report at the beginning. We have heard that we are very pleased to see the European Parliament being involved in a real inclusive way in this reform for the first time. Our representatives have a say in it. Now, unfortunately, the Agricultural Committee, which can be perceived as the stronghold of agricultural interests actually within the Parliament. We have 5 former agricultural ministers in the committee, including the chairman and the rapporteur, are going away where their recommendations will not be put to a vote of the plenary of all members of the European Parliament, including, for instance, those caring especially about development, environment, trade, other issues, but will have a vote inside their Ag committee and then start to negotiate with their agricultural colleagues, so to speak, the 27 Ag ministers, and will only put the agreement they find with the ministers to a plenary vote, which we consider to be rather a fait accompli. There will be very little chance for the other perspectives to have a solid impact on the negotiations. The negotiations may take place in this room, and we expect those who will negotiate to have a mandate of the full plenary to negotiate this and not just a mandate of the Ag committee. There is still the time. If you really hurry up, you can do it. And I can tell you we had many discussions. This is the clear expectation of civil society. Live up to the expectation of more transparency and democracy. Okay, so without further ado, I give the word now to Stanka, who will first summarize Mr. Dantin's part. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Benny. Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome from my side as well to the rapporteurs. I think quite a lot of speeches have been done and people are really burning to ask their questions. So I'll try to be very, very quick of summarizing how we understand the Commission proposals and how we understand the changes that are suggested in the draft proposals, and then we go straight to questions. Looking at the Common Market Organization, regulation. It's the oldest one and it's been done for 50 years. It's been changing quite a lot. So what we see that Mr. Cholos and his team suggests for the new CAP happening. So it says that we should continue with removing milk quota and supply management tools like the milk quota and plantation rights. And to replace them with the so-called safety net tools for some of the sectors with surplus production and with high price volatility. On the other side, we see that all market instruments, investment tools, including the export subsidies, are kept in place. We see that the Commission is proposing as well to strengthen the producers' organizations and private storage and give more responsibilities to producers to deal with their offer and the bargaining power vis-à-vis the transnational supermarkets and the traders. So that's in 3 sentences what is suggested in the Commission's proposals. So how do we read your changes, Mr. Dantin? Basically you say, well, the Commission's approach is okay. We can continue with market interventions only in urgent cases of extreme price volatilities and crises. You suggest to change the competition rules so it takes into account specific conditions of the farm sector. And you say also member states should have the obligations to provide data on the quantities of the production, the cost and price developments to increase the transparency on price building and markets. So basically these are the main things that we see in your proposal. We heard as well what was said by Olivier de Schutter. He mentioned the food crisis. He mentioned how we can expect in the future further price volatilities. So I wonder how crisis-proven are the new cap market instruments? And please, in 2 minutes, the main things that you would like to mention from your report.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for this summary, quite a brief summary. 30-second summary of 345 amendments. Good job. In the new society, there are 7 distribution groups that control what is available for the consumers and to pressurize the different chains. And more than 13 million farmers should be able to organize themselves in order to cope with these extra pressures. On the basis of this assessment, we think that the world developed and we have to strengthen the internal security, the self-sufficiency of the European Union, and the chains should have more powers in their diversity in order to manage their markets. The public authorities should not control the markets anymore through a public policy. We need a full chain policy up until the consumer. It should be strengthened. To do so, adaptations will be needed in terms of the competition, for instance, as today groupings are very often sanctioned.
Thanks a lot. You managed to be as brief as I was, so we can, I think, straight away go to a lot of questions, because I'm sure that people would, and especially I think the farmers that we have around would have a lot of questions to ask. So please, the floor is yours. For you, we have the same rules. I can understand that everyone would like to ask their questions, but please be very brief, be exact, and try to be very specific so that Mr. Dantin and also the other MEPs have the opportunity to answer very concretely.
And please say your name and your affiliation before you speak. Thank you.
My name is Philippe Connard, spokesperson of the Coordination Paysanne France. Mr. the Commissioner, you referred to an important aspect of the CAP, namely its legitimacy. Which I can't understand today is the fact that the subsidies are proportionate to the areas, whereas they are meant to be income guarantees. So giving 100,000 euros to one single farm, is it meaningful if you want to speak about legitimacy? So what we ask for is fair subsidy, fair assistance. That's what we call for. Today, the consumers, the citizens, will not understand the common agricultural policy anymore. They can't understand that farmers are left alone and left to cope with the markets alone. Great parts of the French territory are abandoned today because the farmers listen to the rules of the markets, and in 4 years' time they will buy cows because the dairy prices will be on the increase. Is it the policy we want to impose? fair assistance is needed, and to do so there is a need to cap the subsidies in a way that will be understood by the farmers and that will be legitimate in the eyes of the citizens.
46 seconds.
Great. So, Mr. Dantin, I would give the word to you as well. So we do question, answer in a very short and brief manner.
I've got my own answer to this question. The matter of aid subsidies should be dealt with by Luis Manuel. If you want my own point of view, I can give it to you, but it's not the opinion of the rapporteur because I'm not in charge of this issue.
Rapporteur Capoulas Santos can say something about it.
Yes, but let's stick to the questions on the single market first and then move on to the main part where Mr. Capoulas Santos will be the cheerleader, obviously.
Yeah, so we have another person who would like to pose a question.
Go ahead. Herzlichen Dank. Mein Name ist
Thank you. I'm Romuald Schaber from the European Milk Board. This afternoon we heard that many are concerned regarding agricultural policy and food. The situation is as follows. The farmers are dependent on state subsidies or official subsidies in 2/3 of the cases, and still they don't see a future. Many leave their farms. We heard that big companies have increasing influence and that in the end the consumer no longer has a freedom of choice. We heard words asking for a change to the system, and here my question to Mr. Dantin. When you look at the proposal from the Commission, and if you compare it to the need to change the system, are the proposals from the Commission sufficient? Or would you add ideas you would deem necessary to bring about that change to the system? It's certainly not advisable to continue the discussion alone for many years. It's about concrete ideas and proposals. What are yours?
I think that the discussion within the Agricultural Commission showed that the Commission's proposals on the regulation of the market do not go far enough. We share the fact that yesterday's instruments will not help us build tomorrow's policy. The policy in the sector of milk, to which the Parliament did contribute, answers the need to consolidate contracting in time. From the point of view of many farmers, this concept of contracts is challenged, but in a situation of fluctuating markets, we think that this is a first element that will help us develop a new regulation. On top of that, there is a need to find a technical and legislative solution in order to maintain production even in the most fragile regions. Concerning the dairy products, very often it is the only production possible in some territories where there is only grass. So during the milk package we highlighted this fact. The legal considerations were not sufficient to achieve a solution, and we asked the Commission to make new proposals on that particular topic by a certain deadline. As many amendments make the same proposal, we'll have to discuss about the quotas over a certain period of time, dairy quotas. I realized that the Agricultural Commission voted 3 times, already voted 3 times, and each time this principle of quotas was rejected. So if you are pro-quota, the majority was quite shorter.
Okay, thanks a lot for this answer. I think we had someone in the corner there, so I'll take your question first.
Ja, Kerstin Lange von
Kerstin Lange from Miserio, Germany. Miserio is a Catholic charity for development. We had a study on the milk powder exports from the EU to Burkina Faso. Milk powder was exported. Why was it made possible? Why was it allowed? And the exports subsidies, why is that still an element of the market regulation?
Alors, ce que je veux...
Don't forget that the budget amounts to less than 1% of the whole CAP budget. And during the last 3 years, it was decreasing. At the level of our Commission, our point of view is that this policy is now meaningless, except if it is adapted. So we are in favor of zeroing the budget line, putting the budget line at zero. Some past instruments were abandoned. I think that we should maintain the legal instrument in order to be able to use it from time to time tomorrow in case of need at European level or at for humanitarian reasons. I'm one of those who advocate for helping the African countries develop intra-African cooperation to maintain their food security instead of maintaining their food security thanks to European imports. And it's another matter, but we should accept the requests for partnership from the new democracies, the new powers in place in the south of the Mediterranean Sea, that ask us to formalize contracts to guarantee a certain level of food production, and they would guarantee a certain level of energy production. But it's another matter.
Thanks a lot. I'll be personally also interested to understand what you think about Europe's self-sufficiency in feeds, but that's another question. I would leave more space rather to people who wanted to ask a question. The lady on the right side, left side, sorry, in the white, you had a question?
Bonjour à tous, Isabelle.
My name is Isabelle Conneau, milk producer in France. I'd like to come back on the issue of contracting. It's quite a failure in France. There will be a crisis instead of it, in spite of it. Why? Because there is no price. We are not against contracts. On the contrary, if it gives us a price, a sufficient price, we are ready to sign it. Contracting in France made it possible to give our volumes to industrialists, and today we are the slaves of industrialists. Even if we are said that we own the cooperative, what we can do is provide them with raw materials at a very low price. Of course, we understood the Council of Ministers, the European Parliament, but don't forget that behind all that there are farmers, and you should ask the farmers concerned what they do want to produce. All the types of farming can have a place in Europe, but our objective is not to feed the world. We have to survive, and we have to feed our families first.
Vous avez, madame, dans votre...
You highlighted a couple of items which are quite important. First, you were right in saying that the current types of contracting, because of the legislation, lead to price obstacles. And that's the reason why I propose the rules of competition to be changed in my report. And if we want long-term contracts, we don't want them to be set on a price. I would like the contracts to have a formula of prices depending upon the market and your costs. And this is quite central. And I know that within the Agricultural Commission of the Parliament, the debates with some liberals will be difficult. But I hope to get a majority on this objective. Now, concerning the dialogue with farmers, you're living at the other end of France. I just can't meet you every day. We can discuss by emails, but we cannot meet face to face. Anyway, I try to be as close as possible to real-life farmers, especially if you consider that the real farmers are those who get up very early in the morning.
Answer. We have on the right side, I see, I would like to welcome as well Maria Gatica from Argentina, and she would also like to pose a question.
Ich stelle die Frage aufgrund der fehlenden Verdolmetschung.
Well, I'm asking the question because we don't have any Spanish interpretation. Well, our neighborhood is surrounded by genetically modified soya beans, and we have had recently the fact that many children are born who have cancer or have had deformations, and 33% of the population die of tumors, and 80% of our children have chemicals in their blood. Now, question to you, the European Union imports this soya beans as a feed for animals here in Europe, for the cattle. Why doesn't the European Union, in the framework of the reform of the CAP, why doesn't it take any action against these soya beans to become independent from it? For example, by a resolute strengthening of alternatives. Why does the European Union depend on soya, which is at the cost of our own health in Argentina?
Yes, once again. There are more to it in your question. First, I'd like to tell you that the production conditions outside Europe depend upon the public authorities outside Europe. And for us, as Europeans, I like to thank you for your contribution, because in our commission we ask for the repossession of our own productions in order to maintain a certain level of monitoring throughout the chain, thinking that having monitoring made throughout the chain is much more safe than at the end of the chain. And the second point will be answered to by Luis Manuel, because he is competent in that. The EP approved by a very large majority some months ago a report on proteins in Europe. I had the opportunity several times to tell you that with the enlargement of the European Union and the possible increase of production in Central Europe, there is a possibility to free some territories all over Europe to resettle these types of productions. And I had a similar experience in France. It is not enough to say that the producers should redevelop this type of farming. Full chains have to be redeveloped. I've got the example of the region north of Dijon. Because of the quality of the water there, the local authorities asked the producers to grow alfalfa, but there were no consumer to consume the alfalfa, and factories were too far away. So it's a perfect example showing that proteins should be reintroduced in Europe, but throughout the chain.
Thanks a lot. I think this last contribution was also very interesting and also very important in the debate, also as you mentioned, for the direct payments. You mentioned quite a lot of issues, strengthening diversity, how to reduce Europe's impacts on developing countries, how to change the whole food chain for a better. And I think for the next few months you would have anyway a lot of negotiations to do with your colleagues until you arrive at the moment to have a stable position of the Parliament. And I hope that you'll take these discussions and the points that were made by people into these discussions and try to reflect the opinions that were raised here. So thanks a lot. I hope that you still stay with us because we continue now with the next report.
Yes. Could I have a 3-minute exemption, please?
Okay.
You have to know you have already used 30 minutes of the time.
Yes, we have used 26 minutes of the time, but I think it is worth, in this case, to insist and eventually clarify. Sofia Gatica and Maria Godoy have started a fight 10 years ago against the fumigation of their children and their neighbors. She has lost a child to glyphosate spraying. Their neighborhood is under siege of this. We have an obligation to address this because this glyphosate sprayed soybeans go into the stomachs of our meat production. I think we have to respond, and the European Parliament must respond, to the claim of the Commission that it would be impossible to, under WTO rules, to do anything about these imports on the market level. This is why this question went to you, Mr. Dantin. And I think it would be fair, as we have the rapporteur on the protein production of the committee here, to allow him for the 2 minutes we have to explain what the position of the Parliament in that respect has been actually. Please, Mr. Häusling.
Ja, der Bericht zur
Well, the report about the protein production here in Europe this is something which hasn't reached everyone yet. And I think it's quite clear that the impact on the countries is something which we should bear in mind, and this is not really happening. We had an interesting vote at the European Parliament level, and the majority said we need the same conditions for all imports as we do have for our own production. The majority was in favour of that. But then they added it's not valid for the feed imports because we do need them for feeding our animals. So it's a contradictory. Now for our own protein supply, we said that this should be also part of the reform of the GAP, the CAP, so that we farmers actually start these protein productions so we would not be dependent on other countries anymore. So I hope that this is also going to be taken into consideration by the discussions about the CAP reform. Now I have the suspicions that the WTO is being used as a pretense, as an excuse that it's the WTO's fault that nothing can happen. I think the World Trade Organization certainly could do something, but it's probably not going to do that. But I hope that the Commission is going to do something about it, and we certainly are going to fight for it at the European Parliament level.
Wir bedanken uns auch für diesen
Thank you very much for that contribution.
way with the rural development regulation. And I'll try to summarize it as quickly as I can again. So we're dealing here now with a smaller budget of the CAP payments, where we have mostly member states co-financed measures. Currently we have three main axes, and we have the leader approach as well. But now the Commission is suggesting that we scrap this axis and suggest that member states should offer in their rural development programs 6 priority areas, and the buzzwords that we see there are farm investment and modernization, knowledge transfer and innovation, food chain organization and risk management, enhancing ecosystem functioning and resource efficiency, low carbon economy, social inclusion. Well, it would be interesting to know what is behind all these buzzwords. But maybe more in the question session. Then the Commission also suggests that a new instrument should be introduced, the so-called risk management scheme of public co-financed insurance against bad weather conditions, animal and plant diseases, and other income losses. Then the cooperation between farmers and measures which enhance innovation in the farming practices and rural development are highlighted. So what we can see now in Mr. Capoulas Santos' report, he says, well, basically I support the Commission's proposals, and you also further emphasize the productivity and competitiveness. And you say that we should reintroduce the early retirement scheme. You as well say, okay, this insurance scheme is good, so you basically support it, instead of investing in more prevention and resilience. And you would like to take out the water efficiency requirements for irrigation investments. So that's how we read your report. That's a very short summary. We have with us also Mrs. Kadenbach, who is the rapporteur on the opinion in the Environmental Committee, which has been voted today. And as we talked and we emphasized how important it is that the Agricultural Committee listens also to the opinions of other committees, I would like Mrs. Kadenbach first to summarize very quickly, give us as well the main outcomes of this opinion, and I hope that Mr. Capoulas Santos would very carefully listen to what the Environmental Committee just decided today.
Ja, zuerst einmal ein ganz herzliches Danke.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I know that we only have a limited time budget, but nevertheless, since it's the first time we've had a conference of this kind, I'd like to express my gratitude to all participants and for the fact that we could have this conference. I have been listening very carefully, and you have been speaking on my behalf, and a lot of things you have been saying have already been taken into consideration by the draft of the European Commission for the CAP reform. But in the Environmental Committee, we enlarged that with additional points. Of course, we have all come with a lot of emotions, and I think emotions are important because political commitment has to base on emotions. But I'd like, nevertheless, I would like to insist that since we are talking about the dying of farmers and the disappearing of farmers, we should not use the word genocide, which some people seem to use. Now, my report has been accepted by the European Parliament, and I can tell you that's not with the majority I would have wished, really, but it has been accepted. It would have been greater to have a larger majority. But one point which you raised before when mentioning the 6th priority was access to risk management in the second pillar was not really rightly placed, because risk management is all about income losses which should be compensated, and that should belong to the 1st pillar. So we are going to try to do that, to change that in the Agricultural Committee. A second point I'm extremely glad about, in the present Commission proposals, within the environmental proposals, we don't have any binding proposals. We would have wished 35% for these measures. And in general, we can say we have had a good conversation between the Agricultural Committee and the Environmental Committee, because this also depends on the people sitting in this committee. But in the coming weeks, there are going to be intensive discussions. I've heard it's not only a question of the negotiating within the Parliament, but also it also depends on the discussions taking place afterwards with the European Council. And here again, I would ask for your commitment, but only together we are going to be able to exercise influence and to do something about it. We can only have results if our parliamentarians will hear these concerns of as many directions as possible. And of course, we are ready to listen to you. And that's a very important element of democracy. We also have to make sure that we are listened to at the national level, but only if Parliament and Council make a decision we can do something about a sustainable agricultural policy, which will also influence the rural development in general, which won't see it only as an agricultural soil, but also as more.
Agricultural MEPs will be open to listen to your opinions. So, Mr. Capoulas Santos, would you listen to what the Environmental Committee just voted upon, and what's your opinion on the risk management tool, which is still kept in your report, mainly?
Okay, merci. C'est un très grand plaisir de pouvoir participer.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you in this meeting. I would like to answer the first question about the fairness of the CAP. I don't know if you allow me to answer this question right now.
2 minutes in general. So if you can cover it in 2 minutes.
Sur cette question, sur la gestion.
On the risk management, it's a voluntary measure. Only the member states who want to do it will apply it. And in my country, for example, in Portugal, it's a very important question because we have, fires, we have very difficult climatic conditions that probably you don't have in the Nordic countries. So you need to admit that some member states will need that instrument and others won't. That's why, like the Commission, I propose to put this measure, this voluntary measure, under the second pillar. The Environmental Committee would prefer to have it under the first pillar. No problem if you do so. It will not be appropriate because then you would have to reduce the direct aids to the farmers to fund the measure, and the member states not applying the measure, well, they will find themselves in a difficult situation. But that's not the main issue. My proposal is to maintain this system on a voluntary basis under the second pillar. But if there is a compromise, if we need to transfer it to the first pillar, it won't be a big problem. But the main question that you raised is the key political question in this process, the fairness of the CAP. The CAP is not fair. That has been the struggle all my life. It's not fair among the farmers, among the member states, the regions. We need to do something to introduce a certain degree of fairness. And I did everything that was possible, still remaining responsible, because of course I could have written a report with my personal views, but they wouldn't have been in compromise. So I made a report introducing a bit more fairness than it is the case at present. Let me give you 2 or 3 examples. As you know, for the time being, there is a member state, Estonia, where the farmers receive 94 euros a hectare. In the Netherlands, the amount is 457 euros. It's not fair. So the Commission proposes a small correction. In my example, the Baltic countries will double the aids, but by doubling the aids, they will still remain 35% below the community average. So other member states will have to pay. So who? France, Germany? But if you talk about that, if you want to define a specific number, you'll see what the reactions will be. Second, internally, as you know, there are farmers receiving 2,000 euros per hectare and others 70. So we need a convergence, but this convergence cannot happen from one day to another. So we need to find convergence, progressive convergence mechanisms between the member states and within the member states. And what I've tried to change in my report was the following. I tried to go a bit further in the convergence between the member states, because the Commission proposes a harmonization to an amount of in the horizon of 2029, but in a few regions, the milk sector would find it very, very difficult to survive. So I'm proposing something which is a bit better than the Commission's proposal. If you ask me, is the Parliament going to support us? Well, you'll see that in a few weeks' time. But there are many oppositions to some of the measures aiming at improving the situation a little bit.
We're discussing now the rural development regulation. You went into the direct payments already, but I think that's okay. But I think people will still have some questions to the rural development regulation, and so please, I would like to ask people to ask their questions to the rural development regulation. We talked about insurance schemes and the 6 priority areas, just to summarize. So the man there.
Bonsoir.
Good afternoon. I'm Sylvain Arnolet. I'm a milk producer in Picardy in France. I'm a member of the European Milk Board. I would like to tell you that today in my farm I'm totally aware of the fact that we, milk producers, especially if we have an intensive system, we're going to have less payments. I've noted 2 things to support the milk sector. First of all, the safety net. And I would like to ask this question. Do you think that the safety net for the milk for 210 euros the tons, so 21 cents, is enough? It only covers the operational costs. So with this safety net, we don't cover all of our fixed costs, that is buildings, etc. And Mr. Dantin also underlined it. In Europe, we have 7 to 8 supermarket chains. Today, we have a second proposal to reinforce our power. It's contracting. So my second question is the following. Do you think that having one single buyer for the milk production, because I should have signed a contract with my private industrial partner, which I didn't do because for me contracting was not possible, because the contracts signed today, well, the producers have signed a contract with their industrial partner and they will have only one buyer. So the producers' organizations that are being set up are vertical producers' organizations linked to one partner without any possible negotiations. I would also like to underline that the fact that we didn't sign this contract, I'm being threatened that my milk won't be taken. I'm also suffering from a financial discrimination. You need to know that this present system costs a lot of money to the farmers, and that's why the farmers sign what they are being proposed, because they don't have any other choice. So this contracting system, people have signed with private industrialists. They have signed 5-year contracts without prices. So that was my question. Do you think that these solutions will be enough?
I would like to encourage people to ask questions to the Rural Development Regulation. To be very precise, thanks a lot for your question. We'll park it, and I would ask Mr. Capoulas Santos to answer it when we discuss the direct payments. But there was a question.
Yeah, my name is Jan Plagge from the IFORM EU group. My question to Mr. Santos, oder ich spreche in Deutsch, das kann dann übersetzen.
Maybe I can speak German so it can be translated. We are deeply concerned as far as the second pillar is concerned, at the budget, because we have a lot of new possibilities. Risk management you have mentioned, this is something which should be financed in the second pillar. The question is, well, how? What kind of budget is going to cover all these many new measures chosen by the member states? You're proposing a 60% co-financing, all right, more than the Commission, but this is too little for many poor regions and countries. How should they be able to carry out these measures, ecological farming, if countries haven't got any money? So the question is, well, how are we going to get a substantial budget in the second pillar which is going to cover all these numerous measures?
Très bien, vous avez tout à fait.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That's the most important political question will be the budget. As you know, we've been working with the proposal of the Commission, and they propose a budget which is approximately 10% lower as compared to the budget for the previous period. And sustainable development represents 25% of the total budget. So indeed, we have a wonderful list of possibilities, but we need to know what the budget will be. And as you know, there are rumors saying that the Council is preparing to present a proposal which would be even lower than the one we have on the table. So that's a real political question, very, very important, because it's not only a lower budget, but it will be used by 28 member states as compared to a budget which was designed for 15. So it's a very, very complicated situation. And then there is the issue of co-funding, because there are countries having very serious budgetary difficulties, and for which the Commission recently adopted an exceptional provision making it possible to have a higher community co-funding, but who will lose? The farmers, because if the national co-funding is reduced, the global amount will be reduced as well. So you're right, it will be the key question. We have decided within the Agriculture Committee, all the coordinators of all the political groups have decided that we won't vote any report before we know the budget, the final budget for agriculture. And we are available to block the negotiation if the final budget proposed is much lower. You know, we always said that we demand at least a similar budget to the one that we have today. Maybe we can accept until 10% less, but not more than that. We need to rediscuss the content of the policy, because otherwise, from a philosophical point of view, we'll have a wonderful reform, but we won't have the necessary conditions to apply it.
Budget discussion is, I think, a very important one, but I would like to come back to the co-financing, to the question, and ask Mrs. Kadenbach as well to say what the Environmental Committee's opinion on that was. If you could just quickly answer to the question as well and say what the Environmental Committee thinks in terms of co-financing agro-environmental measures and the minimum spending, in fact, for these measures.
Konkret zur Kofinanzierung.
Well, on co-financing, and this wasn't part of our opinion. Well, on the topic, I can say the following. The overall budget of the European Union, in those member states that are net contributors or who see themselves as net contributors, we have the interesting situation that everyone, also in agriculture, expects that they still receive the same funds. But in these member states, they are no longer willing to contribute to the European budget. So in the various member states, we have to put on some pressure. Namely, if you really are serious about thinking as a European, you have to be open to a European redistribution. And that's what the Common Agricultural Policy is about, redistribution of funds. There are two large areas, besides maintaining the peace, are the following. Cohesion policy. And as already mentioned by Mr. Capoulas Santos, every member state that still is disadvantaged for geographical reasons or for historic reasons have to be countries where we really put a foundation for a similar quality of life. So changes, adaptation, structural changes have to be promoted and funded. And these are countries that are not net contributors usually. And what else do we need? Europe has to be willing to put money in those regions to develop the agriculture and, as we imagine it, so that the farmers survive there as well. And it also requires a willingness to do that, to use the services coming from there. What do I want to say? In some regions, I would say it's protectionism expressed. And I want to make certain that there is a freedom of choice. I don't want to have a protectionism in any appearance, be it regional or local one.
We would need to...
Okay.
Okay, I think we have already eaten out the time that we had for the rural development regulation, because we have quite a lot to discuss also on the direct payments. And I would like to thank Mrs. Kadenbach for her contribution, and I hope that the both committees would search the discussion in the next few months. Thanks a lot. And we continue now, and Benny would summarize in the same very quick manner what is in the development, in the direct payments regulation. Benny.
Okay, the direct payments. This is where most of the money goes. And the concept is a payment per hectare, not a payment per public good performance, not a payment per person. And this is the reason why 80% of the money go to only 20% of the farmers, while 20% of the money go to 80% of the farmers. And this is probably still something when Mr. Capoulas Santos says that fairness is the struggle of his life to look at. For the first time, a capping has been proposed a digression. However, it will, according to calculations, eventually affect a maximum of 7,000 to 8,000 farms in Europe. It will not really make a difference because it only starts at 300,000. The instrument is probably interesting. On the other side, a so-called flat rate for small farmers is being proposed between 500 and 1,000 euro, and Mr. Capoulas Santos, to mention this, immediately argues for 1,500. This will affect between 15 and 50% of the farmers of member states. Young farmers should get a little more money. So younger, if you are under 40, you get more money than when you get 41. And finally, and the most the key innovation, so to speak, proposed by the Commission is that 30% go for environmental services. And the Commission demands a minimum crop diversification, or you would probably call it crop rotation if it wasn't for 1 year only, which, however, just says the biggest crop 70% and the two others a minimum of 5%. That is far below what, for instance, in Germany is already the law and the requirement. The Commission demands that pastures and other grasslands are maintained, and finally that 7% of every farm holding are ecological focus areas. This is not set aside, but this is a priority on the ecological function of that land. What we read from Mr. Capoulas Santos' draft report is that he wants the entire greening only to be applied in farms which are bigger than 20 hectares, exempt everybody below 20 hectares. Then he has a whole list of other relaxations and also exemptions he is proposing. And probably the most influential is this, that all nitrogen fixing plant cultivation would be seen as part of this 7% ecological focus area. This is obviously not exactly what we had in mind when we were talking about crop rotation. And it should be mentioned that a majority of the committee, as far as we can see, also from the numerous amendments, is going one step further than Mr. Capoulas Santos and says, let's scrap this whole greening in the direct payments and let's set up a shopping list where every member state can choose from a couple of things what they would like to make a little greener and then offer it to the farmers and get away with a mandatory greening altogether. This is how we see your report on the direct payments, Mr. Capoulas Santos. I hope I haven't missed anything important.
Ok, vous avez parlé.
It's certainly the most controversial regulation, and there are a lot of diverging points of view. My report, that follows months of discussions with NGOs and with other partners, contain what I think could be a reasonable compromise. And on this issue of the greening, my objective is mainly to protect the small farmers. So I introduced a wider system according to the dimension of the farms, up to 150 euros. It's different to the 1,000 euros proposed by the Commission. And in the framework of the greening, I moved from 3 to 20 hectares, the area that is meant to be used to green the product for very practical reasons. The farmers until 20 hectares represent 20% of all the farmers in the Union. So if we make an exception, and I'm going to explain what the exception is, So, if we make an exception, we would make the life easier for many farmers, 80% of the farmers, but with only 20% of the whole territory. If we were to apply the proposal of the Commission that says that a farm with 3.5 hectares must have 3 different types of crops, how to control it? There will be a lot of mistakes. It will be quite expensive, and the environmental profits would be close to zero. That's the reason why in the field of diversification, either 5 hectares or 20 hectares, there is no need to have 3 crops, but only 2 crops. And concerning the environmentally sound areas, this would only apply to farms of more than 20 hectares. It would be quite ridiculous to apply this to a small 3-hectare farm. It would be ridiculous, and there's no monitoring possible, and it would have no impact whatsoever on the environment. So I think that we were able to strike a balance between those who would like more and some who would like to scrap everything in terms of greening.
Lady in blonde back here.
Thank you. So, Faustine de Fossé from the European Environmental Group. Before starting, I would like to recall that the greening of the CAP affects the whole CAP, so the Pillar 1 and the Pillar 2, and how the Pillar 2 will deliver actually depends on how green the baseline will be in Pillar 1, so it's important to see the two together. So my questions were addressed to Mr. Santos and Mr. De Castro, who already left, apparently, so it would be addressed to Mr. Santos. And will echo what has already been said by various speakers. So today the Committee for Environment has voted its text on the 2 regulations, direct payments and rural development. And it seems that they have standed for real greening, which means a package of measures compulsory at farm level and a Pillar 2 that can build on that for targeted Pillar 2 measures, and also with a minimum spending for the environment, as Mrs. Kadenbach said. However, when we look at the amendments that have been tabled within the Committee for Agriculture, it seems that the tendency is rather to get the money without making sure that there is some delivery in return for society, with elements like the shopping list, the menu versus the package, but also dodgy equivalent mechanisms that at the end of the day will actually make the systems even more complex and more costful for the European citizens. So my questions, which was already asked to you in some way by Stanka, is how you're going to take into account these opinions from the Committee for Environment. How are you going to make sure that the final decision of the Parliament is taken into consideration, this opinion, and that it actually reflects the whole of the Parliament, and that the decision is not only in the hands of one single committee, which is unfortunately dominated by vested interest? Thank you very much.
I think this is a question for a 30-second answer, isn't it?
Okay.
What I can tell you, I took part in the discussion in the Environmental Committee, and on this topic there is no major difference between them and what we advocate for, or at least what I advocate for. For instance, the Environmental Committee proposes 10% for the ecological areas. We propose 7. The Environmental Committee adopted one of our proposals. 2 farms together will have the possibility to have, if the 2 areas are continuous, it will only be 5%. To cut a long story short, what we defend is the rotation of crops. From an environmental point of view, it's the sound solution. I do agree. Yet, from a practical point of view, And from the point of view of the possibility of controls, it is not possible. Because here we are speaking about thousands of farms. So if they change every year, it will be quite costly to monitor this principle. That's the reason why I tend to favor diversification, not for environmental reasons, but for practical reasons. If you have good solutions on how to monitor the principle of rotation, why not? So the issue is not at the level of the environment, but the issue will be raised by some MEPs who do not want the greening pillar. So I proposed not a list, because a shopping list will be it's the same as the second pillar. So I propose common measures in the first pillar, and in the second pillar the measures must be more open and maybe accepted to help the first pillar.
The gentleman over there. Oh, Mrs. Kahnbach has to leave.
Madame Kahnbach va devoir quitter. Merci beaucoup d'être venu à la conférence.
Samuel Ferret de l'Arc.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Samuel Ferret from ARC 2020. From the point of view of many civil society organizations which are meant to explain the draft proposals on the review of the CAP, there is still one pending question for many European citizens. It concerns the targeting of the aids. The Commission proposes to improve the targeting in view of a better greening to help young farmers, to help coupled farms. But there is still one question. What about the right to a basic payment? And how to justify this right when the prices may be very high, but the rights still remain the same, are calculated according to the hectares. So what is your justification? As you know, the CAP started to evolve many years ago, around 92. And the main line was a decoupling of the aids for well-known reasons, because of our commitments within the WTO, and we've been looking for a new legitimacy or way to make it legitimate. And now the argumentation is greening and the contribution of farms to the whole community, and what the farmers are doing to green the environment. You said that only 30% of aids, of direct payments, go to the greening objective. The only way I can understand it is that it will not stop. Some say 30%, it's quite a lot. Others would say it's not enough. But I say it's only one step. That's why I defend the Commission's proposal, and I propose a small increase for the younger farmers and for small farms. And I will also introduce in the compromise the possibility to include not only the young farmers but also the new farmers, because of unemployment. Many people decide to become farmers after a certain age, so we could also help those who are new farmers, even if they are not very young. But as I told you, the justification is the greening, and that's why I say we must maintain a greening system that can be applied everywhere. that is practical.
Thank you. My name is Therese Robbins. I work for BirdLife. I could not echo more what the previous speaker was. In the end, this is about the European budget. And the European budget is a huge amount of money, of which 40% goes to agriculture. And out of this 40%, 75% goes to the first pillar. So the question is really, what is the legitimation for getting the money? And the legitimation of getting the money is been trying to put in there by putting a strong link to sustainability. And the strong link to sustainability is made by greening. And this doesn't mean just a percentage of the money, it should be everything. And in there looking and saying, oh, we're protecting the small farmers and we're creating X number of exemptions because they won't be able to do it, is just looking at it the other way around. Greening is the opportunity. It's the opportunity to show to farmers that they deserve the money, that they can get paid for actually doing the greening that we would like to see happening in Europe. So it shouldn't be, let's exempt everybody. It should be, how can we make sure people are part of the system? And there, you should try to, switch your thinking a little bit. Because if we look, at what the Environment Committee has voted this morning, it's not that close to what you propose. And it's I agree, not at all close to what other people are proposing, because they're trying either to completely water down the greening by making it a full-on menu in which everybody can pick and choose, or they're trying to keep the package, which you are doing, but trying to exempt everybody. What's the purpose of exempting everybody if this is supposed to justify the money?
Quand vous parlez d'une liste,
when you talk about a list, a menu, you're not talking about my report, you're talking about the amendments that were presented and that we are going to negotiate. I'm absolutely convinced that the menu will not be accepted because that would be against the farmers. A menu, we have it in the second pillar, and if we accept a menu in the first pillar, if we have one in the second pillar, then it will be said that the aids under the first pillar are not justified. So I'm convinced that the menu will not be approved. But it's a common agricultural policy. It's a green policy, which is environmental friendly, but it's not a common environmental policy. We are in Europe. Agriculture is a productive activity. We need to produce food in a crisis situation, in a situation of volatility of the market, of dependencies between the regional markets. So in this reform, we need to harmonize as much as possible. We need to have a competitive, profitable agriculture, but also a green agriculture, remunerating properly the farmers and compensating for the constraints they need to comply with in order to be a green agriculture. And I think that this point is quite well reflected in my reflections. And we are within the limits that are acceptable to find a majority compromise in the Parliament. I participate in many meetings in the Copa Cogeca, for example, and they blame me for being too green. And when I talk to the organizations, they tell me I'm too productivist. So maybe I have found a balance there in order to find a compromise, because if we don't have a majority in the Parliament, if we don't have a majority in the Council, we won't have an agricultural policy after 2013. And we need to be pragmatic and not only agree with our own convictions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Capoulas Santos. I think you can be sure that nobody in this room has accused you of being too green, actually. And I am afraid that I cannot take any more questions. The chairman tells me time is running, and it's a fact, even though we have actually just come to what I believe is the turning point. And the turning point is whether the common agricultural policy is able to make a next step into a common food policy, a common environment policy as well, or whether it is the beginning of the end of classical farm subsidies. We don't have the answer here, but I think we did get a lot of different views on it, and with that I give the word back to the chairman for the last quarter of an hour. Thank you.
I think more the last 3 minutes, because we have to leave also this room, and before the room is empty it takes always a little bit of time. But first I like to thank some people, you know, the people behind the scenes, the staff of ARC, the staff of Slow Food International, who is doing all the preparation work in the shadow. A big applause for them. Thanks to all the officials who are here. Thanks to all the MEPs who are here, with open ears and open eyes, I hope. And I think that at least I hope that in 2020, because we're talking about ARC 2020, that in 2020 we will remember the 19th September of 2012 here in this building as an important turning point for an agriculture food policy who is more fair, who is greener, who is more healthier, and who has more democracy inside. And said that, then I think we will have that memory in mind when we leave this building. But don't forget, I think it's clear that the discussion is still going on, but the ongoing discussion needs input. And input is also give a phone call to the member of the European Parliament you know. Give a phone call or an email to your National Agricultural Committee in the Parliament, because they also have to take positions. I wish you all good success, and thanks for everybody for being here. Have a good and safe trip home. Bye-bye. Hey, man. I think